All right, welcome everyone to A&M 150 week, I think this is week 9, or maybe week 8. This is Dr. Rebecca Handford here, and I am the course developer for the Art and Practice stream for CCNM. So it's very nice to meet you. I know that my Toronto colleagues haven't had a chance to meet me yet. I graduated from Boucher in 2007 and started practice in 2009. And I have been in practice in the Kitsilano area of Vancouver since that time. And so I just wanted you to know a little bit more about me before we get started. And I want to introduce you to our chronic pain expert for the day. We're going to do an interview today to find out a little bit more about his perspective, which is definitely an effective perspective, but maybe a little bit different from some of the other perspectives on chronic pain that you might encounter. I'd like to introduce you to Mikhail Mamishvili. He is a shiatsu therapist who practices in Vancouver. And he is also my colleague. We have worked together on various projects over the years. And so, Mikhail, I would like to start by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about your experience and how you came to be an expert in chronic pain.
Well, hi, everyone, and thank you, Rebecca, for introducing me. I'm honored to be here and share my story and my experience. For me, it started 25 years ago with my own pain. So 25 years ago, I experienced a lower back injury, quite a severe one. And I did what a lot of our patients do. We go to the doctor, complain about our pain, and the doctor, if you're lucky, will examine it and send you for x-rays, but most likely it will give you some painkillers to help with the pain. So I took the painkillers, I did the x-rays, a week goes by, taking painkillers every day wasn't helping. If anything, it made me constipated, irritated, and upset. And went back to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, maybe you should go and to a rehab facility. And I was sent to a rehab place. It was through workers' compensation because it happened on a work site. So you sent to what I call a production line factory with lots of clients and very little time for the therapist to do good work. So I was there 3 days a week, being zapped with electricity and ultrasound and being told to do these exercises. And after 30 sessions, the pain didn't go away. So now it's a few months go by. I'm depressed by now. I can't do very much. I was very active. I was playing semi-professional soccer also at that time. And I didn't have an outlet. I couldn't work. And it was just getting worse and worse. So I decided to quit the rehab program, spend my own money and go and see a chiropractor. He looked at me, he said, this is the problem, come this many times a week for this many weeks and the problem will go away. And I did. And after 10 days, my head was spinning with all the adjustments. I felt ill. So I stopped going to the chiropractor and I went to the massage therapist and the osteopath and acupuncture, and nothing was really helping. And now a year goes by, and I'm in a depressed state. I've gained weight. I'm fatigued by dealing with this pain that wasn't going away, and I'm young, and I'm questioning, why am I suffering so much? Like what the hell is going on? Why is this pain not going away? And when I was reflecting on it over and over again, in a trance-like state, out of all things, organizing my closet, which I don't usually do, but I think I was just so upset. I threw all my clothes out and started to reorganize them, my subconscious mind revealed memories that were erased during my childhood, and they were quite traumatic memories, traumatic experiences that I had when I was a child. And the brain did such a good job, I had no memory of it. And once that unraveled, it sent me into a really dark hole. And luckily, I was guided to the right therapist. And the first thing the therapist said, and this is one of my first principles, was, Mikhail, I know this is difficult and this seems like so overwhelming and so insurmountable to get over, but I want you to concentrate on one thing and one thing only. I said, what is it? This is just change the state that you're operating under. And I said, what does that mean? I said, well, you've been in this state for most of your life. And all you have to do is understand the building blocks of this state that causes you anguish, pain, depression, and create, in a way, a new operative system with new building blocks that bring more ease, reduce pain, create more positivity. I said, how do I do it? He said, go learn how to meditate. So being the person that I was and I've always been, once I knew that I needed to do something or to investigate something that is of interest and importance to me, I dive into it. So I decided to go and do a 10-day silent retreat at the age of 22 years old. And a lot of people at that time thought that if you do something like that, you're either going to go crazy, you're going to join in a cult, or, or you're going to be one of those people, which are the hippies. And my family thought I was going crazy. My friends thought I was going crazy, but I decided to do it. And it was one of the best things that I did, because in those 10 days of silence, I got to experience and observe what is this body-mind or mind-body that everybody's talking about these days. Through experiencing my mind and my body for 10 to 12 hours a day in silence, you start to learn a lot about the workings of the mind and how it connects to the body. And my pain, my lower back pain, imagine sitting for 10 hours a day with lower back pain. So looking back, I'm like, I don't know what made you go and do it, but I did it. And I was sitting with this pain for 10 hours a day. And on the third day, something miraculous happened. I was sweating. I was in so much pain. I was just sweating profusely. And I was about to scream and yell because I was in so much pain. And I was just staying with the pain, just that what teaching us, just be equanimous, just breathe, just be the observer. And all of a sudden the pain disappeared completely. And what replaced the pain was euphoria and joy and love, even the emotions of love. And I was quite emotional, and I felt what freedom was experientially, freedom from this pain, freedom from this suffering. And that was on the third, and every day progressively I learned more and more. And by the 10th day, I felt in a way like almost like a new person. I felt as if I've done on myself a deep surgery, and not only extracted a lot of my pain, but I've come to understand deeper aspects of me and deeper aspects of this mind and body. And that set me on a journey. And a few years later, at the age of 25, I decided to be a therapist. And based on my own healing, my own recovery from my chronic pain and my traumas. And I discovered my purpose. And the purpose was, okay, I need to help people. This is my purpose in life. And then it was just a matter of how do I do this? So I went to all the schools, including the naturopathic school. And I looked at all the different philosophies. And what attracted me was the body. So when I looked at all the manual methods Shiatsu was the one that really resonated with me based on what I discovered through my own journey, my own experience in those silent retreats. Because from 22 to 29, I did one almost every year.
Okay.
Uh, and so I chose Shiatsu, and Shiatsu gave me the template, the philosophy, and the theory to work with chronic pain in a holistic perspective. So, what does that mean? What I learned from the beginning, and even doing the paper that I did in my program, the term paper was about lower back pain.
Mm-hmm.
That was my issue.
Yeah.
And some of the earliest literature that matched my experience, actually, there were a few books that I found written by MDs that worked for years with chronic pain. And they were unusual because they recognized what I recognized during those silent retreats and during my process, is that emotions and thoughts affect your pain. Mm-hmm. And they're a big contributor to chronic pain. And sometimes as much as 80 to 90%. So once I had that, I had this confirmation in a way by some medical doctors. Yeah. I chose to take that conclusion in a way that I experienced in some of those few doctors and in a way build a lab on it, build my practice on it. And that began my journey with chronic pain. Now, what I've learned about chronic pain, now treating over 15,000 people over the last 20 plus years.
That's a lot.
I learned a lot. And I also went and wanted to learn from, the frontliners, the people that work with pain all the day. And I used to go to a lot of pain conferences. But unfortunately, what I found going to a lot of those pain conferences back then, that many of the presenters were doctors themselves, and doctors that also suffered from chronic pain. And they knew all the clinics to go to. They knew all the specialists to call, but they all in common mentioned they had such a hard time, even with all their access. They had such a hard time in that process. So they can't imagine what a regular patient goes through when they go through this, what I call the pain circuit. And it really becomes like a circuit because you go from one place to another, you get all these people's opinions around the pain. After a while, it becomes so complicated. So they actually coined the term, they added the term complex to chronic pain. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the first times that I've heard that. We're all aware of pain, and then there's acute pain, and then there's chronic pain. But the word complex has been added to it now. And the reason they added complex to the word chronic pain is they really don't know. They really don't know the roots to it. And even the doctors themselves as presenters have recognized the fact that the only thing that they've come to realize that you can block the pain signal with implants and injections. But the problem is that's all you can do. And some of them were telling actually some comical stories where they had implants in their sciatic nerve, and they had a button that they can press every time they were in pain. And the bell is ringing, and they're rushing to get the door, and by accident the button malfunctions, and they start being zapped.
Oh no.
In a comical way, and I was just shaking my head. I'm like, oh, okay, those brilliant people have reached a ceiling to what they could, in a way, discover. And the reason being, that you are just in the box. If you are not working out of this box and taking into account how nutrition can play into it, how your relationships can play into it, how emotions and thoughts can play into it, how the past can play into it, how your habits can play into it, how your hormones can play into it. There's so many variables in a way that create this complex chronic pain syndrome. And in a way, it is a disease. I mean, if you look at the stats and the numbers, it's a disease that is greater than heart disease, cancer, and diabetes put together.
That's true. Yeah. One of the things we'll be doing is I'm also giving them some information on those statistics, but you're right to recognize that it is a complex problem, a very devastating problem in terms of the societal impacts, as well as all of the other impacts of improper treatment leading to opioid addictions, jail time, criminality, broken relation, etc. So I see where you're coming from in seeing that there's a limit to what that kind of perspective can offer to people with chronic pain. Mm-hmm. So you've been working, as you said, with over 15,000 people. So what at this point have you concluded are some of the causes of the chronic pain? If you know, you've listed some of them: attitude, emotion, habits, etc. But is there any unifying themes between all of the people that you've seen who have chronic pain? And how, I guess I'll start with that. What have you noticed that they have in common?
Well, I can write a book about this, of course. Yeah. This is such a fascinating, for me, it's still such a fascinating experience working with clients that are in a complex state. So what does that mean? You know, they can come in specifically with pain, but they can come in with a whole list. And usually by the time they come to a naturopathic doctor, there's a shopping list of symptoms that they come in with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why is it complex? Well, the obvious thing, we as humans are very complex. And also, when you do the pain circuit, as I did, you start losing trust.
Okay.
You start losing trust in the medical professionals, in the therapies, in the therapy, and then you start losing trust in yourself.
Okay.
And it's like a vacuum. And so you become either desperate, you become either hopeless or helpless. And when you're in that overwhelmed state, you're frozen. It's that free state that many of us have experienced or will experience at some point. It's that overwhelmed state. And that's where depression comes in, sometimes suicidal ideation, because it's a self-preservation state. You know, your energy your reserves, your innate reserves are so low because you've been in a constant war with your pain. So then you feel in the consequence. Imagine being in a constant war. Imagine your body, which is so intelligent and it's so diligent and it's so loyal to you, and it's trying to fix everything for you and manage you at the same time, just being exhausted after a while. Imagine sending an army to war and never giving the army a break. You know, and this is where some people can develop, autoimmune diseases or cancers, because the body will start to fight against self, because it's an unsustainable state. So that is the complexity of it. And then a lot of these patients or clients become treatment resistant.
Yeah, that's true.
What does that mean, treatment resistant? How can you say they are resistant to treatment? Look how much they are suffering. Look how much I'm suffering. How can you say to me, sometimes I challenge the clients, how can you say to me that I'm resistant to the treatment? What does that mean? I'm in pain, I'm suffering. Well, self-sabotage is a big factor. Fear can create self-sabotage behavior. Blind spots. When you're in a psychological state, and in that state, there's constant suffering and pain. Uh, it's like living in a cell and not knowing the outside anymore, or not seeing the
Right.
whole picture anymore.
Right.
You just see what's in the sparks of pain.
Yeah.
So your perceptions are distorted. That's what I discovered on my own. That's why the therapist said, once you change your state, everything will change.
Mhm.
Because in the state that I was living, my perception was distorted,
Yeah.
and being influenced by fear, anxiety, and pain. So the mind is so adaptive; it conjures up some possible scenarios of more pain.
Okay.
So that creates avoidance, avoidance behaviors,
Mhm.
and a big part of it is self-sabotage.
Can you give us some examples? So what does self-sabotage look like in a person that's unconsciously resisting, changing their state? And I understand that. I think all of us can relate to the fear of the unknown. And as when you connect that with a lack of trust, as you've said, a lack of trust in the medical system, therefore a lack of trust in the next practitioner they see, which may be you or me. So a lack of trust in the system, the healthcare system, and also a lack of trust in self, right? And then they have to go into a place where they have to trust that things will get better by changing their behaviors, and waiting for the reward to kick in takes a while, right? You need
Yes.
faith and you need trust in order to hope that the changes that are suggested by the therapist or taken on by you will make a difference to your pain. Right. So what does it actually look like in clinic when someone, and give me an example of when somebody self-sabotages, just so we
Well,
can kind of relate to a concrete example of that.
well, one of the biggest factors in a complex chronic state, sleep is affected, right? And if you want to start a state of recovery, you must get your circadian rhythm in order.
Yes.
So the first thing that you want to work on is the quality of your sleep, for example. And many people suffer from insomnia or irregular sleep patterns,
Yeah.
and that starts to influence the day also, and how they operate during the day, and then behaviors and habits are formed because of it. Now they're very hard to break, those behavior and habits, because in a way they're coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
uh, so once we highlight this to a client, you need to create order throughout your day, because you can control the time, and you can control what you do with your time. So you feel out of control, so let's go back to a state that you can control. So let's start controlling your time and your day. So let's set, in a way, routines that will optimize your nervous system and your brain to fall into a deep state of relaxation. So I prescribe a protocol, and in that protocol there's a lot of baths and gentle meditations, and the usage of magnesium is one factor, and making sure that I understand what they're doing throughout the day that could harm, the process of creating a different state. Oftentimes they lie.
Ah, yes, that's true. We've both run into that a lot, haven't we,
they
Mahal?
they lie the majority of the time. Just like little kids will lie, and you will think, this is an adult, this is
Yeah.
a 55-year-old woman, why does she need to lie to me?
Yeah.
This is a 60-year-old man, why does he need to lie to me? But well, we might say they lie, or we could say they omit some information, right? The omit, oh, I forgot to tell you this, but
Yeah.
yes, you're right, this is what I'm doing that is jeopardizing my sleep. So if they're overeating late at night, if they're drinking so much caffeine throughout the day, and you tell them to reduce the caffeine, and they still oh, it's very hard for me to live without coffee. How can I survive through my day without the coffee? I can't let it go. You can't tell me to not drink coffee or to reduce my coffee or snacking at night with sugar. And there's a client I've been working with, and she's overweight and sleep. She's had to resort to sleeping pills, and she used them for a long time, and it took us about 3 months for her to give up those sleeping pills and give up also the eating habits that she had throughout the day, and because it was just her way of coping with the daily stress and suffering and pain that she was experiencing. So
Yeah.
you have the weight gain, and you have an enlarged liver, and you have a buildup of toxicity in the body, and then you have binge eating and emotional eating, and you're so uh, vigilant all day long and trying to, in a way, control all these emotions with food, that the only way that you can sleep is to knock yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
so there's a lot of habits that the clients, in a way, initially as coping mechanisms that were created to cope, but they become so addictive. And again, the self-sabotage is not telling you the whole picture. So you, as the therapist, have to figure it out. You have to create enough trust in the relationship, and in the trust you also create a lot of accountability. You
Mm-hmm.
state the facts. Like, a lot of people come and to a therapist or a doctor, or and they project all these expectations on you to fix their problems, but in reality is the opposite. The accountability must be given back to the client, to the patient.
Mm-hmm.
And the more accountable they become, the more intolerant they become to their addictive habits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And once you remove those, once they become intolerable to the part of themselves that is the self-saboteur, that's when you start to see momentum. Because you remove those habits, you remove those addictive behaviors, and all of a sudden you have a keen student or a keen patient that is just willing to do and experiencing the benefits. And that gives you hope, that gives you energy, renewed energy, and momentum. And that's the key, is that momentum.
Okay.
Because some of these habits can be there for a lifetime, you know.
And especially, we haven't really touched on this, but we've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent when it comes to causes. But I think, coping mechanisms and self-sabotage are huge causes in, like, the process, right? So maybe it isn't the cause of the original pain, but it's the cause of why it's continuing in the way that it is, right?
Yes. Yes.
But another thing that happens, which makes it more difficult, is when people develop coping mechanisms in childhood, in particular, to deal with traumatic or stressful life events, or their situation at home, or whatever, their own personal, growth and development. And they develop self-soothing that turns out to be not so. You can do it when you're a kid, but you cannot continue to do it as an adult, right? And so, but they're so attached to it because it comes from a place of being a kid and being disempowered and not having other options. And I think people get thrown back into that state, right, when they're feeling overwhelmed.
Our relationship with dealing with pain is formed in the house, and our nervous system is formed in a way and adapted to what's going on in the house. And how our parents and as a family unit we deal with pain. When I mean pain, it's not just physical pain, but it's emotional pain, psychological pain, financial pain, family pain, family relationship pain, and even spiritual pain.
Yeah.
So we as kids, we are like sponges. We observe and adapt, and in a way develop a nervous system because of it. with the habits and behaviors reinforcing it, right? And what I find in my practice when I see them, because I get to see kids when it begins. So I'm seeing currently kids that live in a household where it's quite toxic, and they start to develop issues and behaviors. And then I see them as teenagers, how it progresses. Then I see them in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. So you can see the development, of your adaptation in your childhood. You can see it progressing.
Yeah.
But eventually it's unsustainable. And it's almost a conflict between, your true self and who you've adapted to become because of what you experienced.
Right.
And that's the conflict that many of us experience. So in a chronic state too, it's many people are burnt out.
Okay.
So they want change, but they don't have the reserves to change. So a lot of people that come to me, they're chronically fatigued, and they want this to make all these changes. Well, and other therapists and doctors tell them you should change this, you should go on this plan and that plan and this protocol. But oftentimes I look at them and I see they don't have the reserves to make any change.
Right.
So the first part of the process is helping them build those reserves, to start to work with the roots to their pain and the causes of pain. It can start with a physical trauma. So a motor vehicle accident, work injury. And the problem with those things, nobody treats the shock or the trauma.
Yeah.
So where is it managed? It's managed by your body, your nervous system, and parts of your mind. And the shock is never dealt with. The trauma is never dealt with. The pain, the neck pain, where the symptoms are being treated. The symptoms always get treated. The neck pain, the lower back, the whiplash. But oftentimes, again, the impact of the event, of the accident, and the consequences of it don't get treated. So this is where a lot of complex chronic pain is created. So oftentimes when they come to me, I can now, after so much experience, assess how much of the pain is traumatic and how much is it biomechanical. And when I get them after right after a trauma, or not long after it happens, I'm able to see the impact of the shock. I'm able to palpate it even. And once we release that, oftentimes the reaction, it can be quite powerful and emotional. and even the whole body can sometimes shake. It looks like the person is convulsing, but they're not. They're just releasing this tremendous trauma, this tremendous impact that they experience on their nervous system and body. People cry, people yell, and it can create a cascade of responses. And it's quite volatile sometimes for the person, and that's why it's managed.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's so powerful. Yeah.
Well, and I think people have a lot of fears, not just with chronic pain, but with any kind of chronic problem. They fear letting go and what will, like the ifs. What if I release this trauma from my body? I will have a breakdown, right? There's that fear of I will lose my mind. I will fall apart. It's a slippery slope, right? A lot of my patients will say, oh, I can't do that. I can't have that feeling because it'll be a slippery slope towards an uncontrollable breakdown, right? And that avoidance, because of that fear, means that the avoidance itself becomes a wound in a way, because it's like a wound that never heals, that if you touch it, right, and you become afraid of touching it. So then you do all of these things in your life to avoid touching it, right? And that itself causes dysfunction. If you have a sore foot that you're afraid if you touch it, it's going to hurt, right? You start to develop all these limping mechanisms, and that itself wrecks your back, right? And that itself causes you to not exercise as much. And so even just that fear of that avoidance of what happens if I let go, I will fall apart, right? I think people get very hooked up in the possible outcome of change, again, that fear of that change that you're suggesting to them as a therapist will break them in some way.
You're so right. And I call it the pain story,
So tell us about the pain story. I think that's an interesting thing.
And again, there's such a story around the pain, and there's so many misconceptions around pain. And in a way, those misconceptions and lack of understanding what pain is and how to deal with it creates a lot of drama around the pain. And the mind, the way it's designed to protect you from the pain and somehow to gain control around the pain. But part of that protective barrier is to create a lot of story in the head, a lot of possibilities, a lot of what ifs. And in a way, eventually you'll be imprisoned by it. But let's break down what pain is. And again, from my own experience, and that's what I teach to my clients, and demystifies the story in the head that they come with. A lot of the time, what I do is I help them change that narrative, change that story. And the best place to do it with is the body, because the body gives direct feedback. And so many people are disconnected from their body. They just treat their body as a separate entity.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that it's just one unit.
True.
Constantly interacting and communicating. So pain is just a signal. It's a form of communication. It's nothing. There's nothing bad about it. It's also an indication that the body's trying to heal something. So let's just take it for that. It's a form of communication. If you didn't have this form, it's dangerous. You wouldn't know if your leg was cut out.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know if something internally was growing, or it's just all communication. So it's nothing bad. And wherever there's pain, your body's trying to fix it. It's sending the blood there. It's sending the nutrients there. It's trying to clear the waste from all the dead cells around the knee or the back. So there's a lot of healing that is going on with the pain. So if it's a form of communication and healing is already beginning, then my job as the host of this body is not to be alarmed, but to try and understand, why is this pain not going away? And what's contributing to this pain? And once you are more mindful and not so fearful of the pain, and you start to just trust, and the first thing I teach is how to control the nervous system, and the best way to start doing it is with breathing techniques. If anxiety and fear builds up, guess what will happen to the pain? It will increase. Stress, anxiety, fear increases inflammation. Period. So if you want to decrease pain and inflammation, you must decrease anxiety, stress, and fear as best as you can. And the cheapest and easiest way to do it is to start learning how to breathe properly. And I give them simple breathing methods that are quite effective, scientifically effective, that in 5 to 10 minutes, you can change the whole state of your nervous system. And as they experience it with me, helping them doing it, they feel the benefits. So now they have a tool. And a lot of the time, what I found working when we had the clinic, Rebecca, together, Rebecca was my go-to naturopath in the integrative clinic that we had. We had a whole team working around complex chronic pain and trauma. And I learned so much from Rebecca, and she was such a brilliant person that can just cut through all the complexity and bring a lot of clarity to the patient. And what I learned from all that experience that we had together is once they trust, once they start to see some positive effects, then the key part was, can they have them buy into using some tools to help themselves, becoming in a way your own healer or your own therapist.
Yeah.
And that's what I found is the biggest thing. It's not what happens to us, it's the lack of tools and the knowledge that perpetuates the condition.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of giving them tools that work, and initially easy tools that they can see that they work, that they can lean on. So the breathing methods, and once they start to regulate the nervous system, the anxiety lessens, the fear starts to lessen, the stress. Then you can give them more tools to build resilience, maybe in the nervous system, tools to improve their vascular system, which is such an important system to reduce systemic inflammation in the body, right? Tools to regulate the endocrine system, which works so closely with the nervous system. One affects the other.
Yeah.
And once they start to use those tools, and they're easy to use, and they use them consistently, you start to reverse a lot of chronic patterns.
Yeah.
So that's my experience, is teaching the client about this mind-body concept, and that your body is not a separate entity, but actually the most loyal aspect of you.
Yeah.
And I call it your bullshit detector, because you can live from here to here and assume all kinds of things, but your body will tell us yes or no, right or wrong, good for you, not good for you. So aligning yourself with the most loyal aspect of you, and in a way a tremendous intelligence that resides in your body. When they use the word integration or integrative, I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Is integrating, your mind, your heart, and your body. And that's when people start to move towards recovery and healing. And sometimes it can be quite profound. And we've seen this, Rebecca.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just reflecting on some of the key points, right? So when I think about our students, and it's this, we're introducing this concept, right? These concepts of the causes and of the ways, the methods to cut through the complexity at an earlier stage now in the students' development, because they're, for one thing, they're observers in clinic earlier in the new enhanced curriculum. So they're coming in at an earlier stage. And I want them to have tools that they can make sense of the experiences that they have while they're observing people who are getting treatment for their condition, what problem, whatever it happens to be. And we know that a lot of that will be chronic pain, because we know how prevalent chronic pain is, and how often, one of the major reasons people come to naturopaths is because they either have pain or they're tired, right? Those are the two biggest reasons that people come in to see you, right? So because we've been talking for a while now, and I've only got a limited amount of time, I want to ask you, for these students that are listening and watching today, you've talked about how basically they're, it's interesting because the tools that you talk about are very basic tools, and they're very naturopathic tools, if you want to look at it that way. Sleep, endocrine regulation, vascular treatments, all of these things, but they're also basic tools, developing trust, learning how to trust your gut, which is, another way of talking about making friends with your body. And for chronic pain, people who are angry at their body a lot of the time, that itself is a journey, because they're angry a lot of the time at the way their body's behaved. And so, becoming friends with your body itself can be a huge treatment step, right? But we've kind of looked at the simple tools, and then trying to cut through the complexity. And just so it's a little less magic for our first year students that are going to be going and watching patients, what's the take home that you would like first year medical students to know when they're dealing with people in pain, when they're observing patients? What are the things you want them to look for? What are the commonalities? Because they're not going to be offering treatments to these patients, they're just watching, right? But as they're sort of just in this beginning phase, what's the most important things you want a first year medical student to know about chronic pain?
Very good question. Very good question, Rebecca. Most of us that are suffering have two innate needs that are unfulfilled. And that is to be seen, to be truly seen, and to be truly understood.
Mm.
So as a doctor, naturopathic doctor, when they come to you, they really want to come to a person that cares. The word health care,
Mm-hmm.
The care part it should really be the first word. If
Yeah.
they really get the impression that you truly see them, you truly understand them, and you ask the right questions, to make them feel that you're really interested and you're really invested.
Okay.
It sounds simple, and you think, well, everybody really should be like this.
Yeah.
But that's not what our clients experience.
No.
And everything is rushed these days. We don't truly listen. And they feel again, oh, there's another doctor that doesn't care. So why would I trust this doctor, right? And if they come in with all these protective barriers, conscious, unconscious, in a way, in this complex state, just taking the time to really see who is in front of you. What's their behavior like? What are the undertones behind those words? What's the energy level? What's the postures like? Really taking a whole snapshot of the being that is in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would suggest one thing, is to just focus on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I'll never forget just an anecdote from when I was in the process of first and second year naturopathic college. I used to take the SkyTrain from the West End to New Westminster to go to school every day. And the biggest thing that changed is the way I started looking at my fellow SkyTrain passengers and realizing that my perception of them, my assessment of them, my reading of them had completely changed due to what I was learning in naturopathic school.
Exactly.
The global assessment of the patient as they stand or hobble or are wheeled into your office, right? That observation is a special skill. And it's a skill that our students are learning right now. And it's the biggest skill that they will learn by the end of second year, is to look at a person's entirety of their presentation not from a, my personal filter, not from my own biases, not from my own, reactions to this person, but a more neutral and more global and more reasoned assessment of people. And that allows you to start your diagnosis of the patient when they come into your office, before they've said a word, before they've filled in a form, just who they are. If you're good at observing that, if you're able to feel the vibes, as we used to say, then you will be 50% of the way along in your first visit, rather
Exactly.
than not using those skills.
And I would add to that, once you take the time to truly listen with all your senses, and this new eyes that you will have as a naturopathic doctor, it's like having, a different eyesight all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is like a different way of looking. Yeah.
Once you do that and really take the time to hear their story, and keep the notes, and because sometimes in the story there's gold nuggets. The subconscious sometimes, while telling the familiar story will slip out and will give you some gold nuggets. So really pay attention to the words that come out too. Once you establish that, then the next thing is truly assessing, but assessing with your hands.
Okay.
So touch. Most people today are touch deprived. Now, anyone in a chronic state feels so much shame around their own state and inability to heal that the tendency is to isolate.
Yes, it's true.
And because we isolate, we depress. And you could, the person can even put up a front of a very positive person. But once you truly get to know them, what you would see is someone who's really alone and lonely and feels so much shame around their state. So the component of touch is so critical. So as they come and you listen and you hear them truly with your heart and with your being, the next thing, to touch them in that way. As you touch them, you're listening to the body. You're feeling what's underneath this pain, what's really going on in the story, in this memory stick that is the body. And when you touch a person in such a way, that already starts the process of healing, the process of self-regulation, the process of recovery. It's not just touching and probing, because that could be even deciphered by the brain's protective mechanism as invasive.
Yeah.
So not probing, but imagine that you're working with a nervous system that is afraid, has been traumatized, is in constant state of vigilance. It's like a wild animal. So how are you going to approach it? How are you going to create that trust? So coming with that perception to touch the person in such a way that it starts to help them relax. Oh, that touch feels so good, Dr. Rebecca. Thank you for really holding me in such a way. Thank you for really acknowledging this pain. People need to be touched, and the intelligent, compassionate touch.
Thank you. I think there's a lot to that particular aspect as well, because unfortunately, a lot of naturopaths in practice are not touching their patients anymore, even to do a vitals or take a pulse and tongue from Chinese medicine. And that's something that means that we lose information. So the kinetic information, and this is what I say when I'm doing my clinical shifts down at the downtown East Side with the students here at Boucher.
Incredible.
Is that you actually develop different information through kinetic, through physical touch of your patients than you do through inquiry, through the mind, eyes, nose, mouth, any of that's, all of that's important. But the touch information that you get from the patient is also extremely important, especially when we're dealing with people who have trauma, yes, who have been touched in negative and violent ways often, right? Is that
if you look at the statistics, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. I mean, at least 10% of the Canadian population has frank diagnosed PTSD at any time. And we know that adverse childhood events affect probably 30 to 40%, if not 50% or more of people. But, the estimates are around that at least.
That's one of the highest rates, Dr. Rebecca, in the modern world. of PTSD. Canada is one of the higher rates. When I
We
came
do.
across those stats, I was shocked because the whole reason my family came here is for safety.
And that, I think that's partly why we have a higher rate. So it's true. We're at about 10% instead of 8, 7, which is, even in the United States, which you'd think would be higher because of the violence down there. But we accept a lot of people from different parts of the world that have experienced a lot of conflict and trauma, and generational trauma, intergenerational trauma as well, right? Even if you're, as you well know, even if you experienced an okay life, if your parents are survivors of trauma, that itself will affect you both genetically, epigenetically, and environmentally. So that's part of why they think. And we also have a lot of our soldiers and veterans have been through peacekeeping missions and other things in the modern world, which has also increased that level of trauma for them. So we do have high rates.
Yeah, it's also what I learned in the countries that lead in PTSD. They tend to be more insular societies.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? If I am experiencing a trauma, first of all, it's not really recognized, or it's starting to change. I shouldn't say that. In the past, it wasn't even recognized. And then I have so much shame around it. I'm so polite. I don't want to bother anyone. I don't want to bother my neighbors, my family, my friends. And everybody wants to leave me alone because they don't want to bother me too.
Yeah.
As in countries where a lot of people experience trauma, but they're not insular. If I am traumatized, my doorbell and my door, there's constantly people knocking and ringing and calling me, checking on me, bringing me food, making sure that I'm sleeping properly. There's a whole community around trauma.
That's right.
That's a huge aspect of why the rise of PTSD in insular countries.
And it also explains why COVID has made all of that situation so much worse, right? You put regular Canadians and put them in isolation for 2 years. It's not surprising that 60% of women say their mental health is worsened since the COVID pandemic, for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been very valuable. I think we've given the students some things to think about today, and just some tools. And again, practicing your observation and practicing your touch skills in clinic, in class, taking your vitals, doing your massage. Don't lose those skills because they will help you a ton.
And harnessing your intuition.
Yeah.
We all have an intuition, a gut feeling. And what I love about my work is how connecting with the body connects me with my intuition. And it's something that if you practice regularly, and by feeling and sensing with touch, you actually connect into your intuition,
And that intuition allows the patients to trust you more because you have better insights about their situation. And intuitively by looking at their face sometimes, whether your suggestion is going to go over or it's not going to go over. You can address the resistance right in the room if you use their intuition, because you know that you've just told them something they don't want to do by their face, by their gestures, they don't say, I don't want to do that. They just make a face. And if you've got your observation skills on, yeah, exactly, then you can address that right away rather than sending them away for 3 weeks and then they don't do it and they come back and they've disappointed you, so they lie. And it's a dynamic you don't want to get into. So that's another really important. And these are the skills that actually help people address the issues. It's not complex, but it is very challenging. So I thank you very much for your time today, Michal. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you for your insights. And if anybody has any questions for Michal, just send me an email at rhandford at ccnm.edu, and I'll make sure he gets your questions and he can communicate with you. So thanks again, Michal. I'm just going to stop recording now. Thank you.